Okay, hey guys, it's Niamh here. Welcome to the All Things ABC podcast. Today we have Jamie in and we're going to be talking about all things nutrition. We're going to go into some Live Better related questions first, and then we can go into more detailed stuff later on. So first question in from a member, and I suppose this will relate to coming into our next Live Better in the new year. Am I ready for the Live Better program, and what is the criteria needed?
Yeah, so with the Live Better nutrition program, the main focus for most people joining on the program is fat loss orientated. So with body composition, what we're talking about reducing body fat, building muscle over time, but depending on where the person is at that moment in time, a lot of people will identify that they're focusing on fat loss. When it comes to any changes in nutrition and lifestyle, the environment needs to be right and the time needs to be right. So, it's a 4-week block. There's a lot of commitment involved. I do find in terms of how we go about tracking things and the details around the program, there needs to be an element of commitment there. It needs to be the right environment in terms of there's no external kind of distractions for you to make the job difficult, because it's tough enough in itself with regards, without other external things dragging you away from what you want to focus on. So I suppose the time needs to be right, that you can commit the time for yourself within the program in that sense. So I suppose that answers the question there in relation to that.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, some people may feel like at the start, if they're a complete beginner, it might be a little bit overwhelming. How do we help them in that scenario? There's a lot of admin involved, it's too much, what do I do? Or how can we help them bridge the gap? And yes, the first week will be a little bit tough, but once you get beyond that, it's actually...
Yeah, so the thing about the program is it's 4 weeks long. So I suppose there's a lot condensed into the period of time that we're performing the block. So there's actually 2 kind of familiarization weeks in a sense. So there's a preliminary week where you could say that we have our orientation. So we have our overview of the program and what's entailed. So it answers all the questions there in terms of whether the time is right, of course, so it answered already. And the expectations evolved around it so people know what they're coming into. Then week 1 of the actual 4-week block is familiarization week. So we don't expect people to be coming in with A1 gold stars in the first week. It's all about finding your feet with the tracking, with the system around tracking your food, for example. Self-monitoring basically is the term there, where we're tracking the food and we're monitoring our body weight, and then we're monitoring the 2 to know if any changes you have made or added in are working in that sense. So there are kind of 2-week blocks to find your feet. There are people who are beginners on the program. There are people who have come back from previous programs who see the value in repeated blocks over the course of the calendar year to help maintain their weight loss that they've achieved previously. So I try and scale it in terms of the bits and pieces that I drip feed in terms of the educational piece are valid for everyone. But tracking will help regardless of the levels. That's the beauty of tracking for that period of time. I am aware that we're using numbers and calorie ranges and protein ranges, but we have other ways of tracking to know that when we wean off it, we have an idea of what a plate looks like.
So portion sizes, it's a big thing for people and me. I just overload the plate with too many carbohydrates. What's a portion size and how do I stick to that portion size?
Lovely. Great question, Niamh.
Yeah.
So with portion sizes, there's different ways to gauge portion sizes. So we've got pre-cooked portion sizes and we've got cooked portion sizes. So if you're shopping in the grocery department,
yeah.
If you're shopping in the supermarket and you're buying your food in bulk, which again is creating that environment for consistency, sustainability, preparation, 100 grams of pre-cooked meat in its raw form is generally 1 serving of protein, which is about 20 to 25 grams of actual protein itself. Okay, so whether that's if it walks, swims or flies, generally that will be a serving size. 1 egg would be 5 to 7 grams. Low-fat Greek yogurt, for example, 100 grams worth of that could be anywhere between 10 grams or so of protein. So that gives you an idea of how to build it up towards the day. In terms of cooked portions then, if you can picture the dimension of a pack of playing cards, that would be 3 ounces of cooked meat, which is about 20 to 25 grams of protein. Or you could use the dimension of your hand, the palm of your hand, and that would be roughly 20 to 25 grams. Again, depends how big your hand is, but it's a good gauger in terms of gauging things on your plate. So in terms of amounts then, most males per meal would look to be hitting about 2 portion sizes. Most females will be looking to hit 1 to 1.5, and that can help support by default, aim for that at breakfast, lunch and dinner, your total amounts for the day then, which we could talk about then again.
Right, in terms of like your veg portions and your carbohydrates, because it's where the carbs come in is where people tend to overspend a little bit.
Yeah, so it's very easy with regards to those loose carbohydrate sources, things like pasta, rice, and so on. So we can use our hands as well in terms of a cooked form to get an idea of what a portion size is. So we could use a cupped hand of, say, any starch or grain, such as oats, pasta, rice, spaghetti, noodles. It'd probably come in around 25 to 30 grams of actual carbohydrate. A typical jacket potato would be 50 grams. A medium potato could be 25 to 30 grams. Sometimes you just have to spend a little bit of time with foods that are harder to gauge. Just do a little bit of an audit on a particular week, and I encourage that in the familiarization week in the Live Better program. Have an idea of what a pre-cooked source of rice, pasta looks like. Do a little bit of a weigh-in over that. You don't need to do it forever because you only need to do it once or twice, and then have some sort of utensil then that can be your serving size when you're scooping it out before you cook it. So there's a saying, how precise and how accurate do we need to be in order to be consistent and make progress. So sometimes these are the little bits and pieces that you may need to get a handle on at the start in order to see progress and create momentum and build confidence and everything like that.
Since we went through portion sizes, another one was important to talk about food quality and food quantity, or food quantity versus food quality. I know calories in, calories out is a topic that you can still progress there, but like you said, if it swims,
if it walks, swims or flies,
that's where we want to aim for.
Not human, I suppose. So that's a saying for people who are meat eaters, of course, right? So quality, quantity. When it comes to quality, we're looking at quality of foods to help support what our body needs. So our body's made of trillions of cells. We want to support each individual cell, give it what it needs so the body can function, so all our systems can function. So if it walks, swims or flies, if it grazes on the land, if it swims in the ocean, grows above or below the ground, comes from a tree, it's going to have the essential nutrients we need quality-wise. So anytime we hear essential, we have to obtain that from the diet. Our body cannot make these certain things like essential vitamins and minerals, essential fatty acids, essential amino acids that come in the form of protein. We need to get that externally from our food to support what our body needs from a quality standpoint. So that's going to support the health aspect of things. When it comes to, again, a lot of people would be interested in the fat loss element. We need to create a sustainable and manageable calorie deficit to create fat loss over time. So it does come into quantity, right? So in terms of creating that calorie deficit, we know that if we're expending more calories through everyday activity and training, more than what we're taking in, we're going to lose body fat over time. So it comes to quantity. However, one of the things that the body responds with when we're losing weight at the beginning, it tends to adapt. It's going to drive up our hunger mechanism. Okay, so how we formulate our food, we need to be quite tactile about that, and we educate that and to Live Better, how we build our plates, the value in protein, higher protein. So that's not only going to support muscle growth and repair and maintenance, it's going to help manage hunger. We're going to look at higher volume-based foods that are larger in bulk but lower in calories to help manage the hunger in between meals. So things like, of course, it's going to come from the ground, of course, things like bright fruits and typical fruits like your apples, your pears and so on, just as examples, vegetables for example. So we can have more of that and make it more sustainable in terms of managing hunger. So quality is important in that aspect. However, you're only as good as what you can sustain. So there's plenty of research to support that people that just maintain a calorie deficit through quantity, they might necessarily eat those foods, can still make progress. But is that going to make the job easier for you? Are you going to be relying on willpower, or are you going to be controlling the things that you control in terms of how you make your meals and so on? So it's creating that, striking that happy balance basically. So people might ask, what is the balance? So 80% of the time we could say, yes, let's get our foods from the earth, and 20% of the time we get the foods that we enjoy, and try and create that bit of a balance, because we need to factor in the enjoyment part of it for the psychological benefit and the social aspect. That foods that may be more process based and easier to overdo, we can still include, but we still have to have that awareness around those foods that is that going to cause me to overeat them? And now all of a sudden now I'm out of my calorie deficit and so on, and I lose momentum and consistency and everything. So there's no right or wrong answer. Quality and quantity is creating that balance.
Yeah. The caveat of carbohydrates, tell me, because like a lot of people are like, are they good, are they bad? They're very easy to overconsume, so that kind of goes into the quality and quantity, just to finish on that point.
It does, yeah. So if we're, again, speaking on the topic of body composition, and say, for example, if it is fat loss is the goal, we have two categories of carbohydrates. And I suppose we need to be careful that how we address them as being good and bad, because we've got two categories. Would be more complex-based carbohydrates that would be deemed as low glycemic index, would be more whole form. So things like porridge, things like whole grain bread, things like maybe brown rice, fruit and veg. So when the body digests those particular foods, they're released into the bloodstream a lot more controlled and slowly. So for everyday meals, they can be typically good choices, okay? And managing our blood sugar and energy levels in between meals. And of course, we're going to combine those with other foods like protein and veg, which is going to slow it down even more, which adds to the argument, do we really need to be as precise as that when we're making mixed meals and blood sugar management? The other category is more simplified, more simple sugars that are digested quite quickly and released into the bloodstream, but we can actually use those to our advantage in terms of implementing them around the training window. And they'd be things like your typical sports drinks, like Lucozade, like energy gels, like jelly babies. It could be more refined based carbohydrate sources like pancakes, like white bread with some jam. So they would be typically consumed on their own, which makes them a lot more quicker into the bloodstream. But we them around the training window, so we can use those foods for our advantage and then use the other carbohydrate sources as our main meals, as part of our main balanced meals throughout the day. So as opposed to looking at them as good as bad, it depends how we use them. But of course the processed ones are very easy to overdo, which can make sustaining a calorie deficit a little bit harder. So it's creating that awareness around your own responses. Everyone is different in terms of how they respond. Me personally, I won't have them in the house. Because if I have one slice of toast, yeah, I'm going back for more. Yeah. I won't buy a multi-pack of sweets. Yeah. Because if I have one, I'm going to go back for more, so I'll buy a portion size and I'll bring that back. So again, it's mindfulness around it and knowing your own triggers and responses. Some people can take a bit out of the bag, consume it, happy out. So again, it's individual, and I do promote that within the program, because I want people to learn so that you can adjust then the next time. And that builds the autonomy again and confidence around your decision making.
Lovely. You mentioned the least amount of protein intake throughout your meals throughout the day. Is it breakfast, lunch or dinner?
Yeah, so research in UCD, they looked at these trends in Irish population, and they wanted to look at the total intake of the day, which meal had the least containing protein in it. And it was found that dinner had the most, which about 50% of the intake for the day came at dinner, a little bit less at lunch, and then the least at breakfast. So again, this is based on this time people for breakfast will have higher carbohydrates based options. So it tends to be sparser in protein. So if you're looking to increase your protein for the day, look at where the main gap is. So previously we spoke about goal setting and behavior change in the workshop, and it's easier to look at adding something in to your lifestyle and nutrition rather than taking things away at the start. So protein could be a potential gap there. We can add something in. So a typical breakfast food, so if you generally have porridge and some milk with a little bit of honey, for example, we know, right, we can impact that. Is there something we can add to that that would be still lower, manageable in calories, but higher in protein? So things like your designer supplements like whey protein will come in nicely there. So a scoop of whey protein would be 20 to 25 grams, and you could mix that up as part of it, or you could have it on the side, of course. You could even get some low-fat Greek yogurt, mix half a scoop possibly with that, because we know that there's 10 grams of protein in that portion of low-fat Greek yogurt. Half a scoop of whey is 10 grams. Some berries mixed in that, and you could have that along with it, and all of a sudden now you boost the actual protein profile of that meal without a complete overhaul. And that might actually dictate your decision making later in the day potentially then, because larger meals at breakfast can help manage hunger for the other meals in the day. So it may lead to less consumption of foods and snacks with a larger breakfast, higher in protein. So that could be a tactic by default to help manage calories for the rest of the day, a larger breakfast.
Last one to finish up the Live Better questions. We have people completing the 4-week block, and then what happens? They want to go into, well, sometimes they continue their deficit for a couple of weeks, but if someone wanted to go into more maintenance, what does that look like for someone?
Yeah, so over the 4 weeks, everyone's on a different path in terms of where they want to get to. So when we analyse our in-body assessment sheet, people have an idea of what their range is in terms of, say, muscle mass and body fat mass, whether they're in the normalised healthy range or over the normalised healthy range with regards to, say, body fat. So it kind of gives us a good indication of how long is it going to take the process to normalise those levels. So it puts things into context for them and manages expectations. So over 4 weeks, we want high quality weight loss. So I help identify a calorie deficit that allows people to lose weight, but it's controlled in terms of the majority of that weight is coming from body fat and retention of muscle mass. Some people might even increase muscle mass at the same time. So it isn't a crash diet approach. That's important. And I know it can be quite motivational when we see our weight drop and we think more is better. So sometimes we actually have to pull people back a little bit. Now again, it depends on the person. So after 4 weeks, people may lose on average 2 to 3 kg. Now on paper, people might sniff at that, but that is quality weight loss, okay? So some people will continue after the 4 weeks because they build momentum. Some people may want to take a break, but then continue again. So they may take a break for a week or two where they go back to their maintenance calories, wean off the tracking possibly, and look to build their meals through the structure they've created already by knowing what a meal looks like, composition of a plate in terms of your carbohydrate and protein, using serving sizes, using your hands and everything like that. And it's a good transition, or some people might just want to transition away completely now and focus on another goal, a performance goal, and going around maintenance calories and weaning off the tracking and using your hands as your portion gauger. It can allow for a little bit more consistency perhaps without being collared by using the numbers on MyFitnessPal. So sometimes it takes a little bit of coaching and trust from people to transition away from that. But I urge people that when they're going to maintenance, we focus on a performance goal. Let's focus now on fueling for our training sessions, getting stronger, and just even hovering around maintenance, in particular for female trainees, can be enough to actually impact the muscle mass end of it and getting stronger and everything like that. But again, it depends how long somebody's been in a calorie deficit, and that's where I came up with the ethos of the reprogram and the rebuild part, where people are reprogramming their head mentally to move away from the calorie deficit. Yeah. So it could take time to build the calories up. We might do a week or two where we bump it up a little bit, and then we do another week or two where we bump it up a little bit until they actually get to the maintenance calories. Some people might actually still be losing weight until they get there, because it takes a little bit of trust because they're so conditioned into the calorie deficit. So the rebuilding the body then as well, because we're building muscle and we're focusing on that. So reprogramming the mind, rebuilding the body as we look at food more as a fuel source and not just the deficit. And again, all comes down to the mindset as well, doesn't it? Absolutely.
Touching on that, like in terms of like a calendar year and someone who wanted to be like, how do I plan my nutrition throughout the year? Slightly outside of performance now at the moment. If it was more focused on fat loss, obviously it's probably not the best idea to be in a calorie deficit for a very extended period of time. So how would you periodise that? How many weeks would you leave a maintenance and then come back into a deficit and vice versa?
So that's a great question. So that ties in nicely with the exit strategy after the 4 week block. So the exit strategy, we talk about maintenance periods and breaks. Okay, so it's important that if you look at your in-body assessment and you realise it could take me 3 to 6 months to get to where I want to be, you need to have a look at, okay, how do I map out my nutrition based off what's approaching in my life currently? So between general holiday events throughout the year, whether that's Christmas, Easter, going on holidays itself, social occasions, that you kind of have them mapped out. It's a bit like hopping into the car at a filling station in Cork, okay, and we're going all the way to Belfast. Do we need pit stops in between, or are we going to go all the way to Belfast in one go? Are we going to schedule in like 3 or 4 stops along the way to make it more manageable? what would you rather do?
I'd need a break. Depends who's driving.
Need the break. So we can look at that as our process to get where we are now to where our main goal is in terms of a body composition standpoint. So say if it is weight loss, quality weight loss, we may think, okay, I'm going to go for a 6-week block here. I'm away for a week, and then I'm going to use the maintenance block that we coach in the nutrition program and implement that. And then we go again for another 4 to 6 weeks, possibly. Again, it depends. And there may be a weekend, such as a christening, and I'm going to use that as a particular break. But there may be little days in between as well, where you have the option to bring up your calories also. So we're very conditioned to be in a calorie deficit in that sense, and that we feel that we always have to be in it, and that we need to punish ourselves in order to lose body fat. But we can be quite tactile about it to impact the sustainability part, and that's the important part. Adherence to sustainability and looking at it as a bigger picture, as opposed to just looking at the outcome. The process is what you want to develop.
And for someone who, let's say, is not coming to the end of their fat loss journey, because obviously they can come in and out of it at any stage, how would we get someone to focus on something outside of fat loss? Or would you ever have that conversation with someone after they've had, like, in their mind they've reached their particular goal that they wanted to reach? Now will we shift to more performance based, or do you want to put on some muscle? Let's think about something a little bit different, a little bit more performance focused.
Yeah, so that's the conversation that needs to be had. So we've got various lifts that our main core lifts in the gym, and each individual a lot of the time will have their preference with certain lifts, and that could be something to focus on, because we need some sort of a proxy measure that if we are developing muscle over time, that we're also getting stronger, because we need to progressively get stronger in the gym and in our program to stimulate muscle growth. So if we look at nutrition as being the queen and training being the king, we get the two together, we get a kingdom, right? So we could eat all the protein we want, and we can eat all the food we want, but if we're not training hard enough, we're probably not going to get the effect we want. Okay, so this is good in terms of we have certain lifts throughout each individual program where we monitor. So are we actually getting stronger? Okay, are we actually seeing a small increase in body weight over time, like over 6 to 8 weeks? And then when we go on the in-body, we could be quite confident, look, we're probably going to see an increase in skeletal muscle mass here, based off changing your focus now to getting stronger in the gym and supporting that process through your food, as opposed to restriction, a little bit of an increase in body weight, oh no, I've put on body fat again, I'm going to go back into diet for 4 weeks, and then I'm out of it, and then I'm back in. So that is the ultimate thing that we want to impact sometimes with people. They're not always on a diet forever type thing. So that again comes under the umbrella of the rebuild and the reprogram, and just looking at things from a different perspective, in terms of your goals and everything.
In terms of a rebuild, if someone was looking to put on some muscle mass, obviously calories would be affected there, but in terms of the protein intake, would you want them in and around the same level they were at in the fat loss phase, or they need to be potentially eating more protein?
So the recommendations for building muscle, if we look at the actual nutritional recommendations, it's anywhere from the 1.6 grams per kg to 2.2 grams per kg of body weight. Okay. When it comes to actual fat loss, we want to bump that up a little bit. That could anywhere be up as high as 2 to 2.4 grams per kg of body weight. Now, we use our in-body assessment as well, and we can use fat-free mass, and that range could be anywhere between 2.3 to 3.1 grams per kg of fat-free mass.
Okay.
To take the thinking out altogether, I think regardless of the goal, most females will do well at hitting 100 grams plus consistently over time. Most males will do well at hitting 140 grams plus most days consistently. And that aligns nicely then with the serving sizes per meal. If most males are aiming for 2 serving sizes of protein per meal, breakfast, lunch and dinner, they're probably going to hit those numbers. Females 1 to 1.5, and we could have a high protein snack in between. You're probably going to hit those numbers without worrying too much about the minutiae with regards to that. And then if we're seeing an improvement with our lifts, we're getting an extra 1 or 2 reps at a given weight, for example, or we've increased the weight for the same reps, We know we've created stimulus and we've got stronger. The bigger our muscle, the more force it can produce strength. So it's a good indicator of progress that way.
And in terms of the live better and the rebuild, like if someone was at maintenance, how far would you bring them beyond maintenance to elicit that growth?
The calories?
Yeah.
So it's a good question as well, and there's plenty of research right now. What is the optimum surplus to induce muscle gain whilst minimizing fat mass gain? So we've already spoke about high quality weight loss. Can we reword that? High quality weight gain. Okay? So most lads have fallen into the trap of I'm bulking, right?
I'm gonna be a pig.
And any type of weight gain at all, that's all muscle. So we need to be quite careful as well then, because you may go on an in-body assessment after 8 weeks and you see an assessment that you're not too keen, you're not too happy about that, and then what are you going to do?
You're going to go
back into fat loss phase. So when we want to build, we need to donate time. It takes longer to build the house. We can lose body fat quite quickly, but it takes longer to build the house, build the muscle mass. Like you'd want at least 3 months of actual focus there.
Yeah.
For more of an intermediate advanced trainee. Beginners can see progress quite quickly. So I think the best approach is hover around maintenance first. Is maintenance calories enough to supply the energy needs? Because it takes energy to build muscle. So is that supplying the energy needs to help support the body to build muscle along with the higher protein intake and training hard and consistency over time? And then we can bump it up a little bit. So it could be a 5 to 10% increase in your calories if you're not seeing an increase in weight. So
the monitoring or self-monitoring of weight should still be practiced?
It should still be practiced for a period of time. Again, as long as we have a healthy relationship with it, and how we look and word the self-monitoring tools is important. We look at it as a tool, as a GPS, whatever we're doing is working. It's not there to judge us or collar us or make life difficult. So it's like the same, if the scale weight isn't going in small little increments, so it could be a 0.2 or a 0.3 of a kg per week, if you want to be that precise with your self-monitoring and know what you're implementing is working, that's a good range, 0.2 to 0.4 or so, max. And then you match that up then with your training performance in the gym.
For females on that one, the weighing scales can be disheartening sometimes, but that's different times of the month. If there was a female that wanted to go into a rebuild phase.
So that's the thing about the Live Better program. It's hard to standardize it for every female at the time when you actually start the 4 weeks, right? So this again is the beauty of self-monitoring, because what I've noticed, females sometimes don't realize these fluctuations sometimes are down to fluctuations in body water because of the hormonal fluctuations through the menstrual cycle. And when you actually have a little bit of tracking, you can think logically, and then you're at less chance then of stopping because you get frustrated. So again, it's how we look at this, and sometimes there's an acceptance involved. That's a certain week in the actual, if we average it out, is 28 days, even though it can vary from female to female, that there will be a week potentially whereby there may be a plateau in weight loss or maybe a slight spike. Well, you could have 10 females and each female will identify with a certain trait in the menstrual cycle differently. So some females may have large fluctuations in body weight at a particular time in the cycle, some may not. Generally it's seen towards the end of week 4, start of week 1, or even through the mid around ovulation time, but generally most of the time it's towards the end. So when I do educate any girls that can relate to this and they have a healthy functional menstrual cycle, not on any form of contraception, not around the perimenopausal age, that you standardize your in-body assessments outside of the Live Better program. And a good time, rule of thumb for that is kind of between day 5, day 8, and that's when it's been seen that the hormones are flatlined at that moment in time. So a female can really see her true weight, her true body composition analysis at that time, and then you can compare the like for like week each month. Now if you find that there is a fluctuation in the week and you can identify it's approaching and you feel, right, I'm just not going to track my weight this week, and then re-enter into the self-monitoring if you want to do it that way. But just feedback from some girls, they appreciate it to be able to see that visually and how there can be a flush quite quickly.
It does come back down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So plateaus, is it a plateau or is it just, fluctuations and just understanding physiology and your own physiology that way?
So we're moving into timing and organisation and stuff like that. All of our members have really busy lives, really busy with work and kids and college or whatever else they might be doing, and playing sports as well. How do we prepare to go into even just eating healthier on a weekly basis? How do we prep for that?
So this is something we spoke about before in the goal setting workshop, and when we set our different action points and tasks for the week, and we filtered it down from the very, very top. So it's identifying first and foremost any barriers that are in place. If we have enough of a why and a reason as to why to take action, sometimes these barriers aren't as high as you think. So again, it all depends how much you want something. A lot of the time people are doing quite well, aren't they? They're getting into the gym and that's a win 2 to 3 times per week. But if you really want to filter it into the body composition standpoint that way, and the health standpoint with the food, because we know the importance of nutrition and exercise work hand in hand together. If you feel you're falling on the nutrition end of it, have a rethink. Why is it that you want to improve X health, body composition, whatever it may be? What's your main reason why? I want to lose weight because, I want to build muscle because, and refer back to that why, okay? When it comes down then to everything, it's all about preparation. Okay, can I identify 1 to 2 food shops throughout the week, large food shops, that I can buy foods conducive with my goal around health, because we know quality now in terms of the foods we get there, quality and quantity with regards to setting up our food for fat loss, that we have them in the house, that we have the environment set to help impact consistency and sustainability, make the progress and maintain it, right? So now we can form our meals, we have them in the house, we're not ringing up the takeaway, or we're not stopping on the takeaway on the way home.
Yeah.
I'm not going into the deli. So it's setting up that environment and matching it with your why. And then more likely then, how our mindset around things changes. And then we start to see progress then as well, and that's going to breed more momentum and confidence and competence in everything you're doing. So I think sometimes you really have to scale it back at times if we find we're being inconsistent things, and just do a little bit of a re-audit. Where am I now and where do I want to be? And I think that's probably the main thing there.
Deadly. In terms of the barriers end of it, people that do shift work are just, their body clock is all around the place. They don't know how much to eat, when to eat. Do you have anyone kind of in the gym that you're working with that you're like, let's try this and see if this works? Or
shift work is very tough on anyone. I don't begrudge anyone that does shift work. So generally a shift will start at 7:30, even 8 o'clock in the evening, and that will roll all the way through for 12 hours for most shift workers, and they may do that for 3 to 4 days in a row. So the thing about that, again, I suppose having awareness of what's happening there. So the circadian clock, if we look at our circadian rhythm, it's just a few things, right? Hormonal fluctuations and what hormones are highest at certain points of the day and when they're lowest. So what tends to happen is it's completely turned on its head when people start to go out of this sync. And what can happen there, it can dictate our food choices. It can make us more susceptible to certain foods that are easier to overeat potentially. And our metabolism, how we respond to those foods, or insulin sensitivity and all that type of stuff, so our reaction to carbohydrate and high carbohydrate based foods. So I think if we have an idea of, okay, what's potentially happening here, could happen here, how could I counteract that? So again, it's an element of preparation there. Digestion can be a little bit of an issue for people, so having more solid meals can be a little bit iffy on the digestive system. So we could think about, generally the recommendations for me would be for anyone. So if we're going to have a main meal, try and have a main meal before your shift, similar to the principles of a larger breakfast perhaps, higher protein, and have that as your main meal before you go into work, as a little bit of substance to it, and then you have your higher protein, easier digesting snacks, possibly, and food. So again, things like your Greek yogurt, things like your whey protein, easy to transport, easy accessible in the staff room. Things like fruit pots or fruit even. If we can just have them available, again, it's creating the environment. I know it's different in the staff room when all the other employees there might have their own preferences. But again, can we control the controllables? I know it's hard saying that because I don't experience shift work, and we know our physiology is against us a little bit during the night shifts, but I suppose it's trying your best to try and get through it, and having the foods there available that you can consume. And again, plenty of fluids and water and so on that you can have with you, because I suppose it is a snapshot of the week, it's not a long duration over time. So that would be my recommendations for that, unless you want to not eat at all during the shift work and call it intermittent fasting, but I don't know how many people are going to do that. So we know we're going to consume. I think the choice is one there.
Brilliant. And in terms of another barrier, so eating out, and you spoke about this briefly in the Live Better section, so if I'm going out at the weekend and I'm still tracking, how do I choose healthy options, or how do I work that into my routine?
Yeah, so just like the maintenance block, we have options here. So if you look at the research, we know that most people are at risk of consuming more calories at the weekend. So the way I've set up the nutrition program is to try and align it with people's lifestyles and preferences. So it makes sense if we're going to consume more food at the weekend, we have more social events coming up, we're out of sync with our routine like we generally have during the weekdays. So you have choices here on what I've coined it as the refuel day. So you have the opportunity to actually increase your calorie intake in around your maintenance calories, and people know their maintenance calories because we're tracking and we're pairing it up with other stuff to help monitor everything. So you have the option of actually increasing your calories on a particular day that isn't going to impact your loss, okay? So instead of thinking you need to be in a deficit that particular day, you have the option to increase. Now, if you want to keep a deficit there and you're going to go out, you know, you could be making the process a little bit harder for yourself, but if that's a situation you want to try and you feel that you can manage that, it's probably having an idea of you are going out for something to eat, have an idea of what restaurant you're going to choose. Is it more conducive with higher protein meals and that you can help modify them?
Just stuff on recovery, supplements is next, and my question is, what is with the kiwis at night time and how does that help you sleep better?
So interesting research has come out from Ireland with regards to 2 kiwis to help with the quality of sleep. So the compounds in the kiwis helping regulate sleep. I'm not too sure it was the amount of time it took an individual to sleep or the quality of the sleep, but either way, there was a carryover to better sleep quality for those that consumed 2 kiwis, food first approach. There's other data to support other type of polyphenol type fruits such as cherry, tart cherry juice. It may, again, the mechanism I'm not 100% sure, it could be impact on the likes of serotonin, which is your precursor to melatonin, which is your main sleep hormone. So there's a lot of designer supplements that would have bits and pieces of those compounds in it, such as tart cherries, magnesium, which can be potentially calm down the nervous system and induce sleep that way, and certain compounds then together. So the kiwi would be where that came from. So again, when it comes to supplements, there's a saying in the sports nutrition realm, food first approach, but not food always. So sometimes it comes a point where are there gaps in an individual's diet whereby based off ethics or preferences where they're low on a certain nutrient, vitamin or mineral, and then that sets the stage, then okay, we need to supplement something in there from a performance benefit, the likes of creatine. We know that we can get some creatine from loads of meat, right? But we'd have to eat kilos and kilos to get the same potential performance benefits that we get with supplementation. So a more practical approach would be to supplement with creatine. So when it comes to supplements, then again, I think regardless of preference, I would look at a multivitamin and a mineral as an insurance policy, that we're getting enough of those essential vitamins and minerals from that actual supplement to prevent any inadequacies or deficiencies developing. So we're not looking at it as an approach, right, I'm taking a supplement, it means I don't have to look after the food first approach. If there is an adjunct and a support tool just to prevent any inadequacies or deficiencies, because when it comes to body composition, the pillar that's often neglected or not even spoken about is the bone. So we know that bone is also a part of body composition. It's not the muscle mass or the fat mass. So we know that the main component of bone, there's a couple of minerals in there, but the main one is calcium. And especially when we have a higher intake of protein as well, we don't want to be in a situation where the body is losing those minerals during a calorie deficit. So we've got to make sure we have adequate calcium in the diet anyway, especially for female cohort. And we know that the importance of certain areas around perimenopause and supporting the training element. But calcium is often something that is overlooked or not spoken about at all as the help supporting the fourth pillar, such as the bone quality and density, and then vitamin D3. So we know that vitamin D3 helps with the absorption of calcium into the system. We know that we can only make vitamin D3 active through our exposure to the sun. We know that 50% of Europeans are deficient in vitamin D. So more than likely we need a vitamin D3 supplement. Now there's another saying, test, don't guess. So can we test our levels so we're not guessing? Now we can request that from our GP. Now there is the argument that some GPs would automatically presume that we are deficient. I'm not speaking for them. And they don't actually test for it in the communal setting as a result. But if we can get one, it gives us an idea of how deficient am I and how much do I need to restore from a supplement end.
Not just from a vitamin D perspective, but from other elements as well.
Other elements such as iron is definitely one to test, in particular for females whose intake and recommendations are much higher than males, especially if you're a female athlete also. So we know that iron is very important for helping the regulation of oxygen around the body and supporting muscle function. So if we're lacking iron, it could have an impact on energy levels and performance and so on. So multivitamin and mineral is an insurance policy regardless, but it doesn't replace getting other bits and pieces from your food. Vitamin D3 from a health perspective as well. Performance aspect, creatine. Omega-3 fatty acids, so I spoke about essential nutrients. We have to obtain certain fatty acids from our diet, and that comes under the umbrella of omega-3 fatty acids that we get from oily fish. Okay, so the recommendations around how many servings of oily fish is recommended per week, I think it's in around 2 to 3 servings per week. So if you know that you don't get that amount in per week, you don't like fish, we need to consider an omega-3 essential fatty acid. We know we're made of trillions and trillions of cells. Okay, each individual cell needs a little bit of a fatty acid to function. So we think about one tablet, we need to chop that up trillions of times and distribute that out to each cell. So it shows you the importance of getting enough into the diet so that our cells can function, our systems can function, our body can function well.
And would you consider whey as a supplement, or would you think that as another food source?
Whey protein, I'd still look at it as it comes under, there's different terms, isn't there? I'd still look at it as a supplement in terms of it's supplementing your diet in a sense. I look at it as a convenience as well. But if you do find there's gaps with regards to nutrition from whole foods, we can look at whey protein as something there to assist. I find it very versatile. I like to use it, especially if you have a sweet tooth or you like those type of snacks. You can modify meals with whey protein and still get that nice satisfaction from that particular snack by integrating whey protein. Whey protein was originally produced to have around the training window because it's a quick digesting source of protein and its highly biological availability means most of the stuff in it is used and gets to the cells. A lot of people have concerns around whey protein. So when I'm getting supplements for athletes, so if you really want to be particular on the source of supplement you choose, make sure that it bears the Informed Sport accreditation badge on it. So athletes are tested for banned substances. So when we look at the quality of supplements, and you want to be careful regardless if you're an athlete or not, we know that 1 in 10 supplements are contaminated in the market with some sort of, inadvertently through some sort of a banned substance. Okay, so Informed Sport, if we know that a supplement bears that logo, they've processed and invested in getting their supplements screened for bad substances at very low levels. And we know that in the sporting realm that 50% of positive cases come from an inadvertently contaminated supplement where an athlete might have taken something unknowingly. So if you want to be particular with your supplements, because that can be a worry for people, that would be the best approach. And we know that whey protein, it comes from milk. Milk is 70-80% casein, slow release protein, 20 to 30% whey. which is a quick releasing protein. When we mix it with other stuff, then it slows it down.
To finish on the podcast, I have one more question for you, Jamie, and it's around pre-event nutrition. So High Rocks just around the corner, and there's people doing the Dublin Marathon this weekend actually as well. So any advice that you would have for those preparing for an event? Let's say give them a week out.
I'm going to let Sean answer these questions because I've never ran a marathon in my life. I used to do cross country when I was younger, so that was enough in itself to put manners on me and toughen me up. We answered the High Rocks of the...
Does it vary depending on the sport?
So we're talking more than 3 hours in a marathon, aren't we?
For me anyway, yeah, definitely.
High Rocks is 90 minutes, is it?
Yeah.
So,
well, give or take.
So if we have... The intake recommendations are going to be a little bit different, right? But the source is still the same. It's going to be carbohydrate and fueling, or fueling for the event. I would still, in terms of High Rocks, we want to practice some sort of going to the filling station the day before and filling the muscles up with carbohydrate and looking at carbohydrate as a fuel source like diesel, petrol. Recommendations, pretty similar in my opinion to a team sport athlete. You're looking at around 6 gram per kg mark over the course of the day. Now getting that much carbohydrate is tough. We already spoke earlier about complex sources of carbohydrate and simple sources of carbohydrate. You can start to amalgamate them together the day before, because if you're just going to rely on complex sources like potato, rice, whole grain breads, they have fibre in them, they have bulk. You're going to feel bloated. You're not going to be able to get that amount of carbohydrate into you. That's the feedback I get a lot of the time. So we can be strategic here. You can have your 3 main meals where you have those sources in there, okay? Pull back on the protein, believe it or not. You won't waste away over a day because you need to be able to have the capacity to eat food. And we know protein makes our feels fuller. Pull back on the veg, okay? You may have an extra serving in those meals. Have some sort of a liquid approach. So we could have some fruit juice, or you could have a bottle of Lucozade. A bottle of Lucozade, you're getting 30 grams. Now you don't drink Lucozade for the whole day and you're asleep on the couch because your blood sugar is all over the shop, okay? We can assist with some liquid forms of carbohydrate because it's easier to get in. Easy forms then of simplified carbohydrates, such as cereals. So it could be Rice Krispies, it could be Cocoa Pops, cornflakes, stuff that we can get into us easy that way. Pancakes with some jam. Could be white toast with some jam, and you can have an idea of how to build up to those amounts. And again, we practice this at some sort of period of time well before the event. Okay, so 6 grams per kg. When it comes to the marathon then, the recommendations are a little bit higher then. We could be tipping towards the 10 to 12, is that correct? Yeah. So the approach is still the same. Now you may need to extend that out. So I'd imagine that the tapering of your training before a marathon is those 2 or 3 days is going to be negligible enough. Is that right, or is there?
I didn't know in the last 2-3 days.
So that might need to expand into 36 hours, into 48 hours to get those amounts in, possibly.
Post-event recovery, and just recovery as an overall word, because it's something that people don't respect, I don't think, especially in the gym. So what's your thoughts on it? So
we look at the 4 hours of recovery, and it blends in nicely with everything we spoke about on the podcast so far. So 4 hours. First one, repair. So we need to get some sort of protein into us. Okay, and the quicker we get that into us, the better. Why not? We have nothing to lose. Okay, so some sort of a protein source. You could go with the whey protein if you like that, or you could just wait and just have a normal mixed meal after a gym session. Now, it may depend on somebody who's an athlete and how quick the next training session is around the corner. If it's 6 hours away, 8 hours away, we may need to be speedy refueling. But for most people, we have ample time. We might have another 2 days before our next training session, right? So it could be just a normal meal. So repair, is there a source of protein in there? Refuel, is there a source of carbohydrate in there? Rehydrate, is there some sort of a fluid with that meal, such as water, for example? And then rest. And that carries over then to the sleep element of things. Restoration, are we doing our balance sessions? We see the value in that. Are we getting leisurely walks as part of a restoration and recovery? So as long as we're hitting those hours in that main post-training meal, we've kick-started recovery. Repair, refuel, rehydrate.
If you're not hitting any of them and you're just hitting the gym 5, 6 every day of the week, or you're doing some sort of high intensity outside of the gym and you're just not getting recovery, how will that impact the body? How will it impact your performance?
So sometimes we can see people thinking more is better, and they could end up training 5, 6 times a week. I think those particular individuals are at risk of under recovering. Okay, so their input then, we could argue, if they're coming into their sessions not feeling energized, sluggish, we then need to look, are you getting enough food in the form of carbohydrate, for example, in the form of protein to help support the demands over the training week? So that was something you would need to do some sort of an audit. That where I recommend, okay, we need to have an idea of what are you taking in right now into your body to help support your training volume, which is the amalgamation of everything over the 5 to 6 days of the week. And then we can match it. And then we know, right, we need to increase our X amount of fuel here in the form of carbohydrate. We might need to increase protein. We may need to look at inadequacies, deficiencies with vitamins and minerals, because we know they play a big part in energy yielding metabolism, allowing us to turn carbohydrate into fuel for the working muscle. So all of these things come into play. Sleep. Sometimes we can control the controllables. If you have small kids at home, getting into the gym for you that day might be a win, and we kind of automatically know I only got 3-4 hours sleep last night. So we know that it's probably that, right? We're still going to train, but we're not going to be pushing hard here. Stages of the cycle. Could be another one. Just the mojo isn't there. We just pull back a little bit on the training session in that particular day. So I suppose there's a lot of variables there, but we do see sometimes people think more is better and they're not matching the demands with their intake.
I think that's it for today. Thanks guys for joining us on today's All Things ABC podcast with Jamie, talking about all things nutrition. We're always looking for new topics to talk about and for Jamie to talk about, so please always come in and ask your coaches any questions. We can get it onto Jamie and we can get another podcast filmed or even some Instagram posts up. So thank you for joining us and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Niamh.